Grab your coffee and settle in because the drama in Fairmont Crest has reached an absolute boiling point, and we need to talk about the Richardson Smith family. I have been watching the recent episodes with a knot in my stomach, especially when it comes to Ted Richardson. The man is carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, and I genuinely fear that he is walking straight into a devastating physical and emotional collapse. Let us take a moment to analyze the sheer amount of pressure Ted is under. Ever since the tornado ripped through Fairmont Crest, Ted has been running on fumes. He has been utterly exhausted from spending time with his kids in the chaotic aftermath of the storm, trying to maintain a brave face while his family's world crumbles. He is desperately pushing aside his own personal feelings, his own trauma, and his own exhaustion just to ensure that Eva is cared for and survives this horrific ordeal. When you look at the dynamic between Ted and Leslie right now, it is painfully clear that Leslie is completely incapable of being the partner he needs. Leslie is spiraling into a frantic, hysterical mess. While her pain over Eva's failing liver is entirely understandable, her chaotic energy is draining whatever life force Ted has left. She is sitting by Eva's bed, rambling about Gilmore Girls and threatening to hunt Kat down because she believes they do not even need a living donor. Leslie is a woman unhinged, and she cannot do a single thing to make Ted feel better. She is a black hole of need right now, pulling Ted into her despair. He is forced to comfort her, to hold her up, while his own heart is breaking under the guilt of once wanting her to abort Eva. This is where Chenise Johnson steps in, and I have to say, my respect for Chenise has skyrocketed. Chenise is Ted's true rock in this storm. While Leslie is screaming in the hallways and making demands, Chenise is the quiet, grounding presence Ted so desperately needs. She brings spare clothes, she checks vitals, and she offers a shoulder for Ted to lean on when he confesses his deep regrets about missing his daughter's childhood milestones. Chenise has put her own grief over Derek's death aside to be the anchor for a man who is drowning in his family's trauma. The contrast between Leslie's manic desperation and Chenise's steadfast support is striking, and it highlights exactly who is truly there for Ted when the chips are down. But that is not all, because the human body can only endure so much stress before it completely shuts down. My biggest fear, and a theory that I cannot shake, is that this horrific pressure from trying to find a living organ donor for Eva is going to cause Ted to suffer a massive stroke right there in the hospital corridor. Imagine the scene. Ted has just finished another grueling emotional conversation with Leslie, trying to talk her down from the ledge. He steps out into the hallway, the sterile fluorescent lights buzzing above him, the weight of Dr. Arnold's grim prognosis that it will be a miracle if Eva survives the morning is echoing in his ears. His chest tightens, the world spins. And then the strong, stoic patriarch of the Richardson family simply collapses onto the cold linoleum floor. The sheer terror of that moment would be unparalleled. Leslie would undoubtedly freeze, her frantic energy turning into useless, paralyzing shock. It would be Chenise who rushes into action, screaming for a crash cart, fighting to save the man she loves, while the rest of the family watches in absolute horror. Ted's condition would be incredibly dangerous, hanging by the thinnest of threads between life and death. The man who has been trying to save everyone else suddenly becomes the one who desperately needs saving. So this makes me wonder about the psychological devastation this will inflict on Kat. We have seen Kat standing her ground, furiously refusing to be tested, screaming at Isaiah in the stairwell, and running away from Ted when he begged her to help. Kat has felt like a spare part, a walking organ bank for a sister she despises. But witnessing her father, her hero, the man who called her his soul and reminisced about playing Monopoly with her collapse from a stroke would shatter her entire world. Kat would be thrown into a state of absolute paralyzing panic. As she watches the medical staff frantically work on Ted, a dark, suffocating realization would wash over her. It was her stubbornness. It was her relentless refusal to take the donor test. It was the intense, agonizing arguments she had with him that served as the final trigger, the explosive spark that sent Ted's blood pressure skyrocketing into a stroke. The guilt would tear her soul apart. She would look down at her hands, the same hands that recently wiped Eva's blood in the dark stairwell, and realize that her desire for bodily autonomy might have just killed her father. Picture Kat standing alone in the sterile, echoing hospital corridor. To her left is the door to the intensive care unit, where her sister Eva is fading away, her liver failing, her heart rate spiking as she slips closer to death. To her right is the emergency trauma room where doctors are desperately trying to stabilize her father after a massive stroke. She is physically and emotionally trapped between two doors of fate, and she is the only one holding the key. This tragic scenario forces Kat to make the most life-altering decision of her entire existence. The psychological warfare inside her mind would be incredible to watch. On one hand, she hates Eva. She remembers the cruelty, the betrayal with her boyfriend, the murder attempts. She told Chelsea she did not want to sacrifice her life for a woman who would have gladly let her die. But on the other hand, she loves Ted more than anything. If she donates her liver to Eva, she knows it will instantly relieve the crushing, life-threatening burden on her father's heart. She could save Eva, not out of love for her sister, but out of a desperate, agonizing need to save her father from the grief that is literally killing him. My theory is that this intense medical crisis is going to blow the lid off the biggest secret in Fairmont Crest. Why is Kat the only match? Why are Ted, Leslie, and Andre all ruled out? We have all seen the theories circulating online, and I am fully on board with the speculation that there was a parentage swap. What if Kat is actually Leslie's biological daughter and Eva is Nicole's? Or what if Leslie is not Eva's mother at all? If Kat is forced onto the operating table to save Eva and relieve Ted's stress, the pre-surgical blood work and genetic testing might reveal a shocking biological truth that changes the Dupree and Richardson Smith families forever. This would perfectly explain why Kat feels so alienated and why the genetic markers for the liver transplant are so incredibly specific. Let us look at the small details the writers have sprinkled in to support this impending explosion. Martin constantly insulting Kat, calling her Princess Kat and demanding she do the right thing. Isaiah calling her Miss Righteous and accusing her of lacking compassion. Every single family member has pushed Kat into a corner, completely ignoring her genuine fears about the surgery. Ted was the only one who tried to understand her, the only one who told the others not to judge her. And now, if Ted falls, Kat loses her only shield. She will be completely exposed to the wrath of Leslie, Martin, and Isaiah. This brings us to the multiple possibilities for the fate of these characters. What happens to Ted? There is a very real possibility that Ted does not walk away from this unscathed. Even if he survives the stroke, he could be left paralyzed, unable to speak, or requiring around-the-clock care. This would permanently shift the power dynamics in the family. It would force Nicole to step up even more, and it would bind Chenise to a life of caregiving, testing the true strength of her commitment to him. Alternatively, Ted could tragically die, leaving Kat with a lifetime of unforgivable guilt and turning her into the ultimate pariah of the family. And what about Kat's fate? If she agrees to the surgery under this immense psychological duress, she might save Eva, but she will lose a part of herself. She will forever resent the family for forcing her hand through tragedy. But what if she still refuses? What if the trauma of seeing Ted collapse completely breaks her mind, and she simply runs away from Fairmont Crest, leaving Eva to die? There's even a dark possibility that a desperate Leslie, who already mentioned that they don't even need a living donor, might resort to extreme, illegal measures. Could Leslie hire Joey Armstrong's underground connections to kidnap Kat and force the organ harvesting? It sounds wild, but in the chaotic world of Beyond the Gates, nothing is off the table when a mother is fighting for her child's life. Personally, my emotions are completely torn. A large part of me fiercely supports Kat. It is her body, her choice, and the way her family is treating her like a walking spare parts facility is absolutely disgusting. She has every right to protect her own life and health, especially against a sister who has been nothing but toxic. But at the same time, I cannot stand to see Ted suffer. He is a flawed man, but his love for his children is profound. Watching him break under the weight of this impossible situation is heartbreaking. I desperately want him to survive, to wake up and tell Kat that he loves her regardless of her choice. As we eagerly anticipate the next episodes, all eyes are on that hospital corridor. The tension is thick enough to cut with a knife. Will Ted's heart give out? Will Kat break under the crushing weight of her father's collapse? Will Eva survive the night, or will the sun rise on a family shattered by death and resentment? The writers have set the stage for an epic tragedy, and I, for one, will be glued to my screen, waiting to see which door Kat finally chooses to open.